Well, hello again, BookTube. It's Ros with my third video for the end of 1 year of being on BookTube, and this is the one about Scallydandling. Now, when I started this channel, I picked that channel name, and people often have asked me, why, and what on earth do you mean by it? Um, and because scallydandling is a word that means kind of larking around a bit, but exploring and having fun. And one of the things that I knew about my plan for this channel was that one of the things that I would do was share my enthusiasm for reading books from outside my home country, my own background, books from around the world. It's not the only thing I like to read, but it's one of the distinctive kind of things about what Ros reads. And so the very first video I did was about Zorba the Greek, um, and a year ago, being a book from Greece, of course. Now, why? Why do I like reading books from all over the place? One of the reasons why I kind of questioned that for myself was a few weeks ago, Steve Donahue, our patron saint of this corner of BookTube, as I say, had a bit of a dig at people that like to talk about the different places their reading comes from, and he's obviously irritated by people trying to say, oh, I read really diversely, and he said he doesn't care. He doesn't, he's not more interested in a book because it's written by an Inuit. He just wants to read good books. And I take his point, but I've realised I actually disagree. And one of the things I've learnt in being involved in BookTube, particularly over the last year, is I've thought more about why I read and why other people read. And I've learnt that we all have very different reasons. No, not all different, but each individual person's sort of things that they want from reading will be subtly different. And so there's like a set of people who really enjoy reading things that are quite that bring them like comfort and feel like secure, or give them a sense of kind of belonging, and that's great. That, isn't it wonderful that books can provide that? And then there's people who what they really like is to be excited and thrilled. They like a thriller or a horror thing. They want to be scared a bit, or they want like big rousing emotions. That's great too. And one of the things that I really like to get from my reading is a sense of sort of discovery, I suppose. I partly read to have other lives alongside my real, real life. If yeah, you know what I mean. Yes, I know you do, because that's something that lots of readers enjoy. And I like it if I feel like I'm getting a different perspective or a different experience from those that I've had the chance to actually live myself. Now, to be fair, um, you can get that from a book that's written by someone who grew up next door to you at the same time as you, because obviously, as human beings, we have common experiences as humans. Um, but also every individual's experience is unique, and so any book can give you a different perspective from your own, and they do, which is brilliant. But I think you can get something different and extra from reading books that are from a time or a place that is different from your own. And so, I'm a white middle class woman from the south of England, and so was Jane Austen. But because she was born in the 18th century, when I read her books, yeah, they give me something that is not my own life, but that I really enjoy. And the same is true of reading books from other parts of the world that aren't from England. And I identified some years ago, I think, that unless you make an active choice to do that, you naturally read the things that your local library has on its shelves, that your local bookshop kind of puts on display, the things that the newspaper you read reviews, the things that the publishing industry where you live kind of pushes at you. That's what you end up reading, or perhaps things that your friends recommend. But unless you belong to BookTube, um, your friends are quite likely to be similar to you and will recommend the same things that you would have read anyway. So about ooh, well, some years ago, I thought I'm going to really seek out books that aren't from England and aren't from America, say, that aren't the mainstream bits of publishing that I get all the time. And um, because because I like a list and getting to kind of tick things off and a bit of a challenge, I decided that I would try and read a book written by an author that hails from every country in the world. And so that became my sort of long-term personal reading challenge. And that's kind of what I refer to when I talk about scallydandling about the books. So I wanted to make this video to ask you, my booktube friends, to kind of help me carry on pursuing this challenge in a couple of different ways. And the first thing I think I should do is explain how um, what books kind of meet my criteria for this long-term personal challenge. And the first is that I want an author that really comes from um, that country for it to kind of tick my box. Um, so ideally, they'd have been born there, they'd have grown up there, or they'd at least have spent an appreciable part of their childhood in that country. Now, sometimes that kind of catches you out. So, if you talk about reading a book from Botswana, someone may well say, "Oh, there's a really well known author, Bessie Head, I think it is. I may have got that wrong. I'll correct it in the notes if so. From Botswana, Botswana's best known woman author." And then when you actually look into her, you discover that she didn't move to Botswana from South Africa till she was aged 27. So, doesn't do it for me. Now, the book that I did read from Botswana in the end, or so far, is one by Unity Dow called Juggling Truths. And that's one of the joys of this project, because what I discovered is that Unity Dow is not only a Botswana novelist, but also Botswana's first ever female High Court judge. And you meet all these really interesting people in the course of reading these books. The book I read from Mauritania, the author of that is basically runs Mauritania's sort of IT comms kind of infrastructure. Who'd have thought it? So they've got to come properly from that place, as far as I'm concerned, which means that I've now had to go back. Well, and some countries that I thought I'd ticked off, I haven't. For example, Carol Phillips, who's well known as an author from St Kitts, actually left there as a baby. So he doesn't tick my box either, although he's a very good author, and I warmly recommend Cambridge and anything else that I've read by him. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is, if at all possible, I want a novel. But realistically, you're not going to find a novel from every country in the world. Collection of short stories, that's fine too, like this one from Cyprus. It's the only book from Cyprus that I could readily availably find. And it's short stories. It's not my favourite, but that's fine. Poetry, I'm up for not a single poem, but a collection of poetry. That'll do. Non-fiction, a memoir, that's great. If if necessary, if there's nothing else non-fiction, but I don't want a travel guide. Do you know what I mean? Yes, I'm looking for a book that brings something from that place for me. The other thing is it has to be in English because I'm not competent enough in any other language to read a whole book. And it's got to be available and affordable. It doesn't have to be cheap, but I can't pay like 50 quid for a book to tick off a country. Now, that set of criteria does pose some challenges. Now, when I talk about doing this read around the world thing, people always talk to me about Anne Morgan, who did a year of reading the world. Now, she credits a booktuber that many of you will know, Jason Cooper of Old Blues Chapter and Verse, of setting off on that. And I'll let him tell that story in the comments if he wants to. But she read something in the course of a year. She read something from every country in the world. But in order to achieve that, she really kind of pushed her definition of what something from that country would be. And also she read some things that were out of print things that people kindly posted or emailed to her, but it's not an option for us sort of normal people. So yeah, I can't just follow her list, if you see what I mean. Another of the challenges that you face in doing this is deciding what's a country. Oh, that must be obvious, you'd say. No, it's not. There's a lot of different kind of definitions, and what I decided to go with is those that are recognised as countries by the United Nations. Now that gives you 193 countries plus two that are whilst not full members of the United Nations, are have kind of like permanent observer status. That's Palestinian Authority and the Vatican City. So that gives me 195. Okay, and of those 195, I have read, let's get this right, 158. So I've got 37 left to go. Having said that, there's a couple of places like Kosovo, say, or Taiwan that are either should be a country like Taiwan. I don't mean to get political about this, but the only reason that the Taiwan isn't recognised fully is because of people not wanting to offend China, or say Kosovo. There's a similar problem, and Kosovo probably will, by the time I finish this project, it probably will be recognised as a country in the same way that South Sudan was. Somaliland is another of those sort of grey area countries. Western Sahara or Sahrawi Republic. So there's some countries that I kind of expect to add on to the end of my list as I get there. But I'm going for the moment with 195. And so far so good. Now, when you approach this, there are some countries that are easy. Okay, and when I started the challenge, I went back and I thought about all the things I'd already read, and thought, how many countries can I kind of tick off without even starting? Obviously I've read things from France or Russia or Sweden, or all those things that they were already there. So that moves things along a bit. Then if you're an English reader, books from India and Pakistan, well, coming out of your ears, no problem finding those. Whereas, say, finding one from Nepal was a challenge. Buddha's Orphans by Samrat Upadhyay. Yeah, good one. If you go to South America, say, there are countries where, like Colombia with Marquez, or Peru with Vargas Llosa, very well-known book. Aunt Julia and the scriptwriter, so well-known, it's got a film made out of it. Chile, Isabel Allende, any number of books available. Isn't it interesting how we just happen to have a lot of books available from certain countries in South America, say, whereas others real struggle. Ecuador, you have to hunt around to find something from there. But this one, the Potbelly Virgin, absolute winner. Paraguay, that's been a challenge. I have either Supreme. I'm going to be reading this as a buddy read with Hester Dunlop later this year. I'm looking forward to that very much. So there's easy countries. Countries are a bit more difficult. Nigeria is a doddle because well, I wonder why. I kind of speculated about this before. I think because Chinua Achebe kind of really kind of established Nigeria's sort of reputation as a literary country. Maybe it's easier to get published there. I don't know. What is the story behind some of this availability or otherwise? But there's loads that you can find. Whereas you're going to have to really try to find something from Benin or Chad, say. So there's the whole challenge of finding things. Now, when you say that, people, as I say, they'll point you to Anne Morgan's list, or they'll point you to lists on Goodreads, and those are really helpful resources. So, yeah, there's a around the world in 80 books group on Goodreads, for example, and with lots of discussion groups and lots of lists. But you have to be damn careful, because quite often people on those lists are quite happy to read books that are about a country rather than from it, or written by people who visited or moved there. So it's not going to do for me. So one of the things that I wanted to say in this video was, if you've got ideas or recommendations for me other than pointing me to those kind of existing lists for my remaining countries, I would be thrilled to pieces. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the show notes, in the description, a list of those countries, all the countries. I have to keep reminding myself how many that I haven't done. The 37 countries that I haven't got to yet. A couple of them I've already got a book lined up, like Paraguay, so I'll put if so. But loads of them I haven't, and most of them I haven't, all but two, I think. So I would love your good suggestions if you have any. The other thing is and actually there's one country which I mentioned, Vatican City, where I'm not sure how I'm going to find a book that's written by someone who really hails from the Vatican City, because it's not really somewhere that people live and have babies and grow up, is it? So if you've got a clever solution for the Vatican City for me, I would love to hear it. Maybe I need to read a book by a pope. Maybe I need to think about when the papal states were a bit bigger and pick a writer from there. Anyway, clever booktube, you will have a solution for me. The other thing I wanted to do in making this video is really kind of exhort you to have a go at reading things that are not from kind of where you're from. I have to say, two of my all-time favourite top writers have come from this project. There's I've read a load of wonderful books, but one of those is Orhan Pamuk, who I read as my originally I read as my kind of Turkish author, and now I whatever he writes, I want to read it. Clarice Lispector from Brazil, recent and magic favourite author for me. And then there are some places that really surprise you. Now, islands are a challenge, small islands, for finding things written by someone from that place. But there are some absolute gems out there from islands. For example, who would have thought that the Cape Verde Islands would have a really exceptional writer like Germano Almeida. This book, The Last Will and Testament of Senhor da Silva. Oh, I can't get the pronunciation right. My Portuguese is totally unacceptable. Da Silva Araujo, but tell me that's terribly wrong. Exceptionally good book, I thought. And I only read it because I was looking for something from Cape Verde. Here's another. Okay, A Girl Called Eel. I only read this because it was miraculous to see a book in English that's from the Comoros Islands. Extraordinarily beautiful and interesting book. Then there's books that kind of touch you, I suppose. I've read various books that talk about the migrant experience. And African Titanics is an example. I don't have a copy because Matilda has it, I think. Very I learned a lot about people who move around the world and why from reading these books. It does. I strongly believe that kind of political and social issues you can almost reach a better understanding of them through reading a novel that explores them than reading a kind of a non-fiction analysis for me. Then there's a country like the Yemen, okay, and it's very poignant, I think, at a point when the Yemen is in a state of utter and disastrous chaos. To be able to read a novel by someone from there, written. This is A Hostage by Zaid Mutay Damaj, written at a point where the Yemen was kind of holding together, perhaps as a country, and it kind of adds the sort of to the level of tragedy, I suppose. He wrote this in the 1980s, and I really valued being reminded of some of the Yemen's sort of history and culture at a point where all we hear about it is war and being a failed state, I suppose. Then, say what you like to read is love stories. Okay, well, that's great. If you have the option of reading a love story by the best known author from Kyrgyzstan, that's set on a collectivized farm during the Second World War, but is also an intense and beautiful love story, why wouldn't you? It's still a beautiful love story, and hits all your boxes. This is Jamilia by Chingiz Aymatov. If you like coming of age books, why would you not want to read a coming of age book that's set in Mongolia? The Blue Sky by Galsan Shinag. It's going to give you all that coming of age stuff, but with an added element of what's it like to live in such a place that was undergoing such a process of change in the lifetime of the character and the lifetime of the author. There's some brilliant books out there about mothers, aren't there, and our relationship with our mothers. This one just happens to be from Gabon, and so you get all the what's it like growing up in a village in Gabon, together with what's it like kind of having your relationship with your mother. Mema, Daniel Mengara. Here, possibly the ultimate example. If you like travel writing, okay, what could be more delightful and illuminating as a piece of travel writing, as it were, is a book that is kind of is about Greenland and the people who live in Greenland, written by someone who grew up in a small village in Togo and always dreamed of going to Greenland and eventually makes it. And his sort of view, perspective, examination, discovery of what it is to live in Greenland is unique. Um, and to me, um, the sort of interaction between him as the first kind of black person to visit Greenland, the first that they'd ever met, and his first experience of going somewhere, in the far north, it's perfect. It's everything I want from a book, and I hope I might make you feel the same. So please share with me any inspiration you have for the countries I haven't read yet, but also if you fancy joining me, if you want a recommendation of a book from a country that I have read, I'm delighted to do that. And if you want to read along with me from a country that I haven't yet read, like Hester is going to read the book from Paraguay with me, please do. That would be gorgeous. And that is why my channel is Scallydandling about the books.